What proof did Muhammad have to offer that these surahs did indeed come from the one true God? 2,000 years before, when Moses was asked to go to his people with a message from God, he immediately saw the question of authenticity. But, behold, they will not believe me, nor hearken unto my voice, for they will say, Jehovah hath not appeared unto thee. Jehovah solved that problem by empowering Moses to perform 3 signs. Seeing these proofs of authenticity, the people believed. Exodus 4, verse 1 to 31. And for the next 40 years the Israelites witnessed many, many more miracles. Particularly was divine power manifested at the time of the giving of the law. Thunder, lightning, fire, smoke, trumpet sound, and earthquake, all combined to testify that Moses was not an impostor, but was indeed a divinely commissioned prophet. Exodus, chapter 7 through 15, and Exodus 19, verse 16 to 18, and Deuteronomy 8, verse 14 to 16. When Jesus Christ came, the same question of authenticity rose, and again it was answered unequivocally, so much so that he was able to send to John the assuring report, the blind are seeing again, and the lame are walking about. The lepers are being cleansed, and the deaf are hearing, and the dead are being raised. And so to the religious leaders of his day Jesus could say, If I am not doing the works of my Father, do not believe me. But if I am doing them, even though you do not believe me, believe the works. Matthew 11 verse 5 and John 10 the verses 37 and 38. Even the religious leaders received a sign, that of Jonah, or of Jesus' resurrection after he had lain in the grave for 3 days. And his followers did even greater signs in that they performed them over a wider area, and for a much longer period of time. Matthew 16 verse 1 to 4, and chapter 28, the verses 12 to 15, John 14:12, Acts 1 verse 3 to 11, and chapter 19, the verses 11 and 12, 1 Corinthians 14:22 and 15, the verses 1 to 20. Both Moses and Jesus were used to guide the people and were proved as God's prophets by the performance of many signs. But where were the signs establishing Muhammad as God's prophet and proving that God had introduced a new religious system through him in Arabia? In the first part of the 7th century, could Muhammad say, as did Jesus, If you do not believe my message, believe my works, signs, miracles? No, he could not, for he had none to establish the authenticity of his message. This fact is admitted as his listeners accused Muhammad of imposture and forgery. See Surah 11, the verses 17 to 19. So is one who stands upon a clear evidence from his Lord like the aforementioned, and a witness from him follows it. And before it was the scripture of Moses to lead and as mercy. Those believers in the former revelations believe in the Quran, but whoever disbelieves in it from the various factions, the fire is his promised destination. So be not in doubt about it. Indeed, it is the truth from your Lord. But most of the people do not believe. And who is more unjust than he who invents a lie about Allah? Those will be presented before their Lord, and the witnesses will say, These are the ones who lied against their Lord. Unquestionably, the curse of Allah is upon the wrongdoers, who averted people from the way of Allah and sought to make it seem deviant while they, concerning the hereafter, were disbelievers. And Surah 17, the verses 90 to 96. And they say, We will not believe you until you break open for us from the ground a spring, or until you have a garden of palm trees and grapes and make rivers gush forth within them in force and abundance, or you make the heaven fall upon us in fragments as you have claimed, or you bring Allah and the angels before us, or you have a house of gold, or you ascend into the sky. And even then, we will not believe in your ascension until you bring down to us a book we may read. Say, Exalted is my Lord. Was I ever but a human messenger? And what prevented the people from believing when guidance came to them except that they said, Has Allah sent a human messenger? Say, If there were upon the earth angels walking securely, we would have sent down to them from the heaven an angel as a messenger. Say, Sufficient is Allah as witness between me and you. Indeed, he is ever, concerning his servants, acquainted and seeing. And Surah 21, the verses 5 and 6. But they say, The revelation is but a mixture of false dreams. Rather, he has invented it. Rather, he is a poet. So let him bring us a sign, just as the previous messengers were sent with miracles. Not a single city which we destroyed believed before them. So will they believe? In view of the many signs the previous prophets had performed, did his listeners not have a right to ask, like in Surah 6 verse 37. And they say, why has a sign not been sent down to him from his Lord? Say, indeed, Allah is able to send down a sign, but most of them do not know. And Surah 13 verse 7. And those who disbelieved say, why has a sign not been sent down to him from his Lord? You are only a warner, and for every people is a guide. But they were told. Surah 6, the verses 109 and 110. And they swear by Allah their strongest oaths that if a sign came to them, they would surely believe in it. Say, the signs are only with Allah, and what will make you perceive that even if a sign came, they would not believe? And we will turn away their hearts and their eyes just as they refused to believe in it the first time, and we will leave them in their transgression, wandering blindly. And Surah 17:59. And nothing has prevented us from sending signs except that the former peoples denied them. And we gave them the she-camel as a visible sign, but they wronged her. And we send not the signs except as a warning. Repeatedly his listeners were told that Muhammad was merely a warner, but that was only begging the question. They wanted proof that Muhammad was indeed God's warner by the performance of signs. True, some in former times did not believe in spite of signs, but that did not keep God from sending signs by his prophets. And neither was that fact used by Christ Jesus as an excuse for not giving proof of his divine commission by the performance of signs, in striking contrast with the former prophets who thus came to their people with clear proofs of their mission. The only sign to which the Quran points, Muslim tradition to the contrary notwithstanding, is that of the literary merit of the message itself. Surah 23. And if you are in doubt about what we have sent down upon our servant Muhammad, then produce a surah the like thereof and call upon your witnesses other than Allah, if you should be truthful. Surah 10:38. Or do they say about the Prophet, he invented it? Say, then bring forth a surah like it and call upon for assistance whomever you can besides Allah, if you should be truthful. Surah 17:88. Say, if mankind and the jinn gathered in order to produce the like of this Quran, they could not produce the like of it, even if they were to each other assistance. Muslim commentators say, it challenges comparison by its beauty. None but God could inspire spiritual truths in such noble language. There are many beautiful passages in the Quran, especially those dealing with God's attributes, such as the earlier and shorter surahs. And no doubt its exalted message and rhyme prose had the greatest attraction for the Arabs at a time when anything that could be strictly called a book may not even have existed in their own language. Yet it cannot be denied that its various parts are of very unequal value. Great literature is not repetitious, but in the Quran again and again the stories of Adam, Moses, Jesus the Messiah and others are rehearsed, and ever to the same purpose. In Surah 55 the expression, then which of the favors of your Lord will ye deny, occurs no less than 31 times in a total of 78 verses. 3 out of every 4 surahs warn of hellfire and punishment after death, and 2 out of 3 bring up the subject of its authenticity. Even more serious is the lack of coherence in the Quran. There's little coherence between the surahs, they being placed in order of length, beginning with the longest ones, although these were written last and compare unfavorably with the first ones. The surahs themselves often seem to be a conglomeration of verses, a factor which makes the Quran extremely difficult to understand correctly, for as one authority, Aqht Muhammad, expresses it, whoever will give his opinion respecting the Quran must be able to discover which Meccan verses are mixed up with Medina surahs, and which Medina verses are confounded with Meccan surahs. Is great literature mixed up or confounded? Coherence is also frequently lacking between the titles and the surahs themselves. Surah 29 is entitled the spider, although only passing mention is made of this insect in the middle of the surah. The same is true of Surah 16, the bee, and of Surah 27, the ant. In the longest surah, Surah 2, the heifer, or the cow, we find only some half a dozen verses of 286 dealing with that animal. The Encyclopedia Britannica, Volume 16, 1907 edition, devotes 2 pages to a discussion of the literary weaknesses of the Quran, such as violation of spelling and interruption of thought to gain rhyme, the rhyming of such indelicate subjects as that relating to woman's menstrual periods, omission of indispensable links, superfluous verbiage, etc. Compare Arabic text of Surah 95 verse 2 and 37 verse 130 with 23 verse 20. 6 verse 85 and 37 verse 123. Nor is the Quran free from grammatical errors. For the historian Carlyle, who had the greatest admiration for his hero Prophet Muhammad, and therefore could not be accused of prejudice, it was incredible and inconceivable that anyone should consider the Quran a literary miracle. Said he, among other things, "It is as toilsome reading as I ever undertook. A wearisome, confused jumble, crude, incondite, written, so far as writing goes, as badly as almost any book ever was." And Gibbon, the author of the monumental work The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, who incidentally was a very harsh critic of so-called Christendom, in his description of the Quran, while admitting that it has some beauty, goes on to say that he was wearied by its endless incoherent rhapsody of fable and precept and declamation, adding that the divine attributes exalt the fancy of the Arabian missionary, but his loftiest strains must yield to the sublime simplicity of the Book of Job, composed in a remote age, in the same country, and to which may be added the Sermon on the Mount, the Book of Isaiah, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, and any number of the Psalms and the parables of Jesus. But, objects our Muslim friend, you overlook the fact that Muhammad was illiterate, and no illiterate person could have produced such a work. True, Muhammad may have been unable to read and write, but the fact remains that he was a very successful businessman, who procured in marriage the hand of his employer, a wealthy and cultured widow. His illiteracy would account for the literary weaknesses we have noted in the Quran, nor can it be argued that the translation is at fault. Truly great literature will show through a translation, as is the case with the Bible, which is great literature in any language. Besides, the defects we have noted of repetitiousness, lack of coherence, faulty rhyme, and the other faults are all inherent in the original Arabic text. Finally, note the testimony of Islam's history on this matter. In the compilation of the Quran under the direction of Zayd ibn Thabit, a contemporary of Muhammad, was the question of authenticity of the various surahs and verses decided on literary merit? Not at all, but upon the oaths of those presenting the surahs. Nor was opinion always unanimous. Some of the companions, associates of Muhammad who survived him, expressed the strongest doubts that surahs 1 and 113 and 114 belonged in the Quran. Clearly, literary merit was not the determining factor with them. Truly, in view of the facts presented, it cannot be claimed that the Quran is divinely inspired because of its being a literary miracle.